Okay, listen, I am so glad you're here because I need to talk about this documentary with somebody, okay? Unknown number, the high school catfish. My brain is not computing what my eyeballs were watching. I have questions on top of questions on top of questions. You see, it started with a single text and then another and then another. And before long, a 14-year-old girl in a small town, Michigan, is drowning in hundreds of messages from someone who knew her every single move. They knew her nickname. They knew what she wore to school. They even knew where she'd been when she thought that no one was watching. But who was it? Was it a classmate, a jealous rival, or someone else entirely? Whoever it was, they're relentless, girl. They showed no signs of stopping. In fact, the texts were escalating, calling for her to disappear, telling her to end her own existence. Welcome to That's My Opinion, where we break down the biggest stories, uncover hidden truths, and explore why they matter. I'm Bacon Bears, and today we are diving into one of the most disturbing cases of digital harassment you will ever hear about, I promise. Also, if you were having a good day, I'm so sorry, I'm about to ruin it. Because this documentary is infuriating, okay? As always, this video is for conversational purposes only. Do your own research and form your own opinions because this one is mine, and let's get started. Beal City, Michigan is the kind of place where secrets don't usually last long. With just over 330 people spread across a few square miles of farmland, everybody knows everybody. Or at least they think they do. There's no bustling downtown here, just quiet streets and open fields. Beal City Public School, where good character counts, is the motto, which I find fitting for this video, is preschool through 12th grade. Inside those halls, about 700 students grow up together year after year. So you've known your classmates your entire life. Each grade has maybe 50 or 60 students, small enough that everyone knows your name, who you hang out with, and who you're dating. And when your world is that small, gossip moves fast, like the speed of lightning. Even parents trade stories at the grocery store. Kids whisper in the hallways. And if something happens in the morning, you can bet your ass that the whole town knows about it by dinner. In a place like this, there are no strangers. And among the small classes at Beal City High School, Lauryn Licari and her boyfriend Owen McKinney stood out as the golden couple. Both were athletes, they earned good grades, and together they looked like the perfect picture of high school love. In a school where everybody knows everybody, Lauryn and Owen weren't just another teenage romance. They were the it couple. Could have never been me. Could have never been me. Their families were just as close. Lauryn's parents, Sean and Kendra, were friends with Owen's parents, Jill and Dave, and the two families often spent time together grilling out in the backyards or sitting side by side in the bleachers on Friday nights, cheering for their kids on the football field and the basketball court. It wasn't just Lauryn and Owen who were inseparable. Their parents shared in the pride, the support, and the everyday life of raising teenagers in a tight-knit community. And when the parents weren't hanging out together, they were still supporting each other's children. Kendra was a fixture at the school, volunteering whenever she could and even coaching girls basketball. She had a reputation of being one of those moms who always just was around, cheering. She was always involved. And on the other side, Jill and Dave McKinney were just as dedicated to their son, Owen. They poured themselves into making sure that their son had every single opportunity. But in October of 2020, everything would change for these two families. And it all started with one little text message. And at first it seems harmless enough, right? A message claiming to be from Owen telling Lauryn that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Another saying that he had feelings for someone else and alluding to the fact that there was another girl. Cruel? Yes. But unfortunately, not unusual in the world of high school drama. Somebody threw tampons on my lawn one time. You know who you are. But it all seemed to stem from a Halloween party that was coming up. That October, another detail added fuel to the whispers. A girl named Chloe Wilson, known around school for being a so-called mean girl, was hosting a Halloween party. And everyone was invited except for Lauryn. There had always been tension between the two, and Owen later said that Chloe was notorious for making Lauryn's life difficult, and even his cousin Adriana claimed Chloe bullied her as well. There is some incident where they threw carrots at her at some point, which, if that was my daughter, do you know how expensive produce is? Don't do that. Rumors swirled that Chloe might have had a crush on Owen, and naturally suspicion landed on her when the text began. Now, when Lauryn received the first breakup messages, Owen stood up for her. He confronted Chloe directly, and he asked her if she was behind it. Chloe denied everything, and the text just mysteriously stopped soon after. For a while, life seemed to return to normal. Lauryn and Owen stayed together, and to everyone watching, they were still the perfect couple in love. And oh, how I wish this was the end of the story. But by the fall of 2021, the silence was broken. Whoever this was must have picked up a hobby for a year, got bored, and then thought, you know what? Time to ruin a couple of 14-year-olds again, because Lauryn's phone buzzed. And this time the messages didn't stop. Night after night, text after text came through. And we're talking 10 p.m., 1 a.m., 3 a.m. But the tone was different now. Darker, vulgar, disgusting, graphic, disturbing, degrading, repulsive, nasty. Half of these texts I can't even put on the screen because YouTube would demonetize me instantly. That's how bad they were. Go find them. Disgusting, I promise. And when I tell you that me, my husband, and my friend were sitting there watching this documentary with our jaws on the floor, yuck. Not only were these texts sexual in nature, describing the nastiest thing this mystery person said to Owen was going to do with them, and then them to Owen, barf. These kids are 14 years old. But they were also flat out dehumanizing. They called Lauryn anorexic. They told her she had a flat ass, called her ugly, said the world would be better off without her. And then it escalated into threats over and over again. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing games anymore. They're on a mission to break Lauryn down completely. And the pace, anywhere from 30 to 60 messages a day. I mean, who even has that kind of time? But now it wasn't just Lauryn being targeted anymore. Owen's phone lit up sometimes dozens of times a day. The messages painted him as unfaithful, as if someone else was vying for his attention, and urged him to leave Lauryn. Whoever was behind it was determined to rip them apart. And the harassment spread like poison through their small high school because the messages used Lauryn's nickname, Lo, and referenced details from her daily life. It seemed obvious, right? The bully had to be one of their classmates. A kid with a lot of time who sits on their phone all day long. It makes sense. And suspicion lands on the usual suspects. There's whispers in the hallway, pointed back to Chloe Wilson, the same girl who conveniently had invited Lauryn to her Halloween party. But then, apparently, Tammy, Chloe's mom, finds out, and she calls Kendra to assure her that Lauryn, in fact, was invited to the party. So is it Chloe or not? Owen later said that Chloe definitely had a reputation for being mean, but Chloe herself denies everything. She told Owen that she had no idea what he was talking about. Still, as the texts piled up, the gossip only grew louder. And it wasn't just Chloe. Other names were dragged into it. Friends accused friends, cousins accused cousins. Either way, the effect, pure chaos. Almost every teenager in Beal City was now looking over their shoulder, wondering if the bully was sitting next to them in class or riding with them on the bus. It turned into that Spider-Man meme where everybody's pointing at each other. And the paranoia didn't stop with the kids. Parents started whispering on the sidelines at games, wondering if their own children could be responsible. What began as a secret torment on Lauryn's phone had now been spilled out into the open, dividing an entire community. Even Jill and Dave noticed a change in Owen. He started retreating, getting angry, pulling away from them. Families are fighting with each other. Friendships were cracking. Our pets' heads are falling off. Now remember, all of this is unfolding during the pandemic. It's 2020, okay? Nobody's going anywhere. And honestly, even if you could, there's not much to do in a place like Beal City, so people stuck to their little pods. And those were the ones that you saw over and over. For Lauryn, that group was her own family and Owen's family, the McKennies. They were all together all the time. They essentially sort of kind of became this blended family. Kendra really stepped into Owen's life during that time. She wasn't just Lauryn's mom, she started to feel like a second mom to Owen. And it went both ways. Jill was just as present for Lauryn. Kendra even volunteered to help with Owen's sports, coaching track, and showing up at his meets. And she didn't just cheer from the sidelines either. She once drove hours across Michigan just to watch him compete in a championship. And in the middle of all of this, Jill is devastated for both children, her son Owen and Lauryn. She could see how badly it was breaking them down. At one point, Lauryn even pleaded with the sender saying, quote, I honestly cannot take anymore. I'll do anything you want if you please stop. That's how desperate she was to make it just all end. And of course, Lauryn takes this information to her mom, and then her mom is devastated because there's nothing that her mom can do to make it stop. And those two are incredibly close. Lauryn was Kendra's only daughter, her only child. Her mom is heartbroken for her. And as a mother myself, I'd get that. I'd be desperate to find out who it was behind it and just shut it down. But here's where I'm confused. Why not just take away the phones? Why are we not just taking away the phones? If the abuse is all coming through the phone, wouldn't cutting that access off at least give these kids some relief? I mean, I would have taken away the original phone, maybe handed over a backup just for emergencies so my child could reach me, and then waited until things either calmed down or we figured out who was doing it. And I also understand Owen's parents saying we shouldn't have to change our phone number. Sure, that makes sense in theory, but at what cost? Your child's mental health has to come first. And another thing I don't quite understand, the parents went to the school first. They thought maybe that the school could help, maybe confront some of the parents of the kids that they suspected were involved and somehow sort it out that way, which, okay, I get trying to handle this whole thing at the school at first, but why not also just go to the police first? If my child was getting hundreds of threatening messages, I'd want law enforcement involved immediately. But when the moms find out, they go to the school. Jill had to do most of the talking because Kendra is a mess. She is completely beside herself, which honestly is totally understandable. These moms are watching their kids fall apart right in front of them. The kids are acting out. They're begging not to go to school. They're breaking down in tears, just trying to get through the day. They are miserable. And high school already sucks. Okay, it's already a hard thing to navigate. And now you have to do this? Ugh. Lauryn is getting 40 to 60 texts a day, all telling her to end her own existence. And when police later asked Kendra if she thought Lauryn might actually hurt herself, Kendra doesn't answer. It was Jill who spoke up, saying, "The answer is yes, Kendra. We are afraid that Lauryn could hurt herself." And the school tries to step in. They interview students, they look at screenshots, they basically try to play detective, and it all went through the school for weeks. The superintendent, Bill Chillman, even said that they just couldn't do much because it was happening off school grounds and on personal devices. So eventually the school does finally hand it over to law enforcement. Thank God. Sheriff Mike Main goes to meet with the families. He goes through pages and pages of screenshots. At that point, they're thinking, this is just a classic case of a mean kid hiding behind a burner phone. And the sheriff really did go down that road. They interviewed classmates, checked out kids who had reputations for being a little edgy, but every lead fizzled. No phone records matched, no IP addresses tied back to the kids that they had suspected. And basically, the more they dug and the more confused everyone got. And in the middle of all of this, while Lauryn is dealing with everything being thrown at her through that phone, her relationship to Owen is falling apart, which for Kendra is heartbreaking because she really believed that these two were going to be together forever. I mean, they were like perfect for each other. Lauryn is crying to her dad that she didn't have any friends anymore because of the texts. At basketball tournaments, she would just sit with her mom. And as a mom, I cannot even imagine it. Watching your kid go through their first heartbreak, knowing that there's nothing you can do to fix it, watching your kid get these awful texts, knowing that there's nothing you can do to stop it, that has to be brutal. But eventually it all came to a head. Owen had enough and he breaks up with Lauryn. This poor girl, her life is spiraling completely out of control, and still not one single person in her life thought to take the goddamn phone away. And I know what you're thinking. Just block the number. But that doesn't work, right? Because every time they would block these numbers, a new one would pop up. That's why you got to take the phone away. But I digress. At one point, the kids even tried to play detective themselves. They were convinced it had to be somebody in the school. So they started testing people. They dropped little bits of information, fake information, out loud around certain classmates, and then they'd wait to see if it showed up in the text messages later that day. But the only time those planted details ever made it back was when they set it around Lauryn. Is she doing this herself? because that's weird. And Kendra and Jill are also just getting so frustrated. Kendra says in the documentary, I was very disappointed in what the police were doing and what the high school was doing. And honestly, same. This girl is getting tormented daily. And the investigation is crawling along while teenagers are out here running sting operations. But one name just kept circling back around, Chloe Wilson. Because little Chloe-isms started showing up in the messages. For example, the sender brags about scoring 12 points in a basketball game. When everyone checked the box scores from the night before, guess who was the only one who scored 12 points? Chloe. According to Owen, Chloe had a reputation for being a mean girl. According to some of her other friends, she also had a crush on Owen. And the way that the texts were written, they leaned hard on words like bruh. Who says bruh? Chloe. Then the texts claimed the cops were defending them. Whose dad is a police officer? Chloe. When Lauren's Snapchat was hacked, the login was traced to Broomfield Township. Who lives there? Say it with me, friends. Chloe. And later, some texts came through from a 906 area code. That's Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And who was there snowboarding with her family? Chloe. It's not looking good. And we're not the only ones thinking it. Pretty much everybody in Beal City is convinced it's Chloe. And here's the thing, after going through all these texts, it's obvious that they weren't just about tearing Lauren down. They were also laser focused on Owen and the fact that he was dating her. So whoever this was did not want to see these two together. So finally, when Owen and Lauren finally break up, you'd think the texter would celebrate, hallelujah, and throw some confetti and call it a day, right? They got exactly what they wanted. Mission accomplished. Pew, pew. Just kidding. No, it actually doesn't stop. It gets way worse. Way worse. The texts shifted into full-on psychological warfare. Messages telling Lauren that she lost Owen, no other guy would ever want her, that she was worthless. Every single day she was being pushed to end her own existence, told that the world would be a better place if she didn't exist. And here's the thing about the texts. Reading these words on your phone is not the same as someone saying them to your face. If somebody comes up to you in person and says, you're ugly, nobody wants you, you can roll your eyes and tell them to fuck off. But when you're reading it in your phone, your brain processes it in your own voice. And it's like you're saying it to yourself. Research shows that kids who are cyberbullied are almost twice as likely to attempt suicide compared to their peers. And unlike someone saying something mean to your face at school, these messages follow you home. They sit on your phone, on your lock screen, and eventually in your head. Add that to the fact that cyberbullying can happen 24/7, even in what should be the safety of your own bedroom. And the impact is devastating. Studies from the CDC and mental health experts show it leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety, PTSD-like symptoms, and kids completely withdrawing from school and social life. They needed to get this girl help, and help quick. The moms are super scared. Lauren is a wonderful athlete, and her dad had said in the documentary that she just gave up. This poor little girl is just dwindling into nothing. So the police decide it's time to turn up the heat. They started interviewing students, Chloe Wilson, Owen's cousin Adriana, and a few others. Really trying to put on the pressure. When Chloe was questioned, she flat out denied it. And of course she did, because who in their right mind is going to be like, yeah, that was me. JK. Who would ever admit to sending over 1,000 pages of disgusting messages? But here's where the case against Chloe starts to crack. Some of the photos sent to Lauren were clearly taken inside of her home. You know who wasn't in her house? Chloe. And Chloe, who honestly is a very smart girl, got sick of being blamed. She actually gave Owen her phone for an entire day just so that he could see for himself that she wasn't the one sending these texts. She also handed her phone over to her dad, who, remember, is a police officer, and he had everything downloaded and checked, and it all came up clean. Now, sure, could she have had it wiped? Absolutely. Could she have been using some hidden app or even had a second phone? Of course. But Craig and Tammy Wilson were adamant that this was not their daughter. At this point, these kids are terrified. Somebody inside of this school, inside of this town, was stalking them. Meanwhile, things at home are unraveling. Kendra and Lauryn Licari are fighting. Their marriage is starting to fracture. Lauryn finally texted the bully, "You win," basically giving up. These families weren't sleeping. They weren't eating. They were just running on panic and fear. And then Owen starts dating a new girl from Pinconning, Michigan. And she then also becomes a target. Her mom starts getting texts. Texts start pouring in to them until she breaks up with Owen. At first, it seems like Lauryn was the mark, but now it's obvious Owen is part of it too, because whoever this is has a very sick infatuation with Owen, talking about very graphic detail of what they're going to do to Owen and what Owen is going to do with them. And yuck, because this boy is 13, 14 years old. Police even did a full data extraction from Owen's phone, hoping for a clue, and came up with nothing. No trail, no suspect, just more questions. Whoever was behind this knew exactly how to cover their tracks. And by spring of 2022, they're stuck. So they do the next best thing. They call in the FBI cyber division. This is where things get interesting, because whoever was behind this wasn't just some bored teenager firing off texts. They were using VPNs, apps that masked numbers, even creating fake accounts with local area codes to make it look like the bully was one of Lauryn's friends. Whoever did this, they had the time, they had the skill. We just need to know the motive, and honestly, just who it is. Who is it? But here's the thing about the internet. You're never as anonymous as you think you are. But let's pivot for a second and talk a little about something called the Pinger app. It's basically a service that gives you a second phone number that you can use on your regular device. Through apps like Text Free or Sideline, you can send texts, make calls, even set up voicemail, all without being tied to your real phone plan. It runs off Wi-Fi or data. So as long as you've got a signal, you've got a working number. A lot of people use it for privacy or business, or I don't know, horrifically harassing 14-year-old children, but it's also the kind of app someone can hide behind because it makes it much harder to trace messages back to them. This is the FBI we're talking about, okay? And if they had been called in sooner, I don't know, maybe Lauryn wouldn't have had to live through all of this. Actually, scratch that. She still would have lived with all the drama and the trauma, but at least it could have ended sooner. Okay? But the FBI digs in. They subpoena records, traced IP addresses, ran through all the phone numbers, and out of everything, only one number comes back. Now, before I tell you who it belongs to, I want you to pause this video. Seriously, pause right now. And I want you to, well, I guess don't pause right then because then you can't hear what I'm going to say next. Okay, so pause after this. Go down to the comments and tell me who you think it is. I'm curious if you're right. And if you've already seen the documentary and you know, just drop the exploding head emoji because we don't want to give it away. But also, what the fuck? Okay? Are you ready? The person who had been sending thousands of pages, cruel and disturbing messages, telling Lauryn over and over that she was worthless, that no one would want her, and pushing her toward harming herself, was not a classmate at all. It wasn't a teenager. It was a full-grown adult. A woman who grew up in Detroit, went to Central Michigan University, where she met her husband, and in 2007, they welcomed their daughter, Lauryn Licari. The person behind all of this was Lauryn's own mother, Kendra Licari. Investigators discovered she was sending 40 to 60 messages a day, sometimes spending up to 8 hours locked into this harassment. The texts included sexually explicit comments, constant insults, and repeated pressure for her own daughter to end her own existence. And when she was finally confronted, the explanations that she gave didn't change anything. In my opinion, Kendra Licari was either jealous of her daughter or trying to live vicariously through her, or maybe even both. Either way, she had only one child, a daughter, and yet Kendra still needed to be the center of attention. Kendra had this reputation as the cool mom, always dancing around, being silly, gossiping with the girls Lauryn's age. And sure, she clearly loved her daughter, maybe, I don't know, but it was intense. Every time she opened her mouth, she was talking about Lauryn, and not in a way that you would find like endearing when a mother speaks of her daughter, but in a way that's annoying. And listen, I'll boast about my kids all day long because I love them. There is nothing more precious on this planet than my own 2 children, okay? They are very much the center of my world, but this goes far beyond that. She also seemed very fixated on Lauryn's relationship with Owen, or maybe it was Owen himself. Personally, I think it's the latter. Kendra would encourage Lauryn to hang on Owen every chance she got. She made him gifts, and people even reported that she once read Lauryn's private texts with Owen and replied herself with "I love you." Kendra replied "I love you" through her daughter's phone to Owen. And we have to keep this in perspective, right? These aren't 17 or 18-year-olds about to graduate high school. These kids are 13 and 14 years old, barely teenagers. To a lot of people, Kendra looked put together, a hardworking mom, the breadwinner in her family, involved in everything her daughter was doing. Now, before we even get into Kendra's why, or at least the version that she gives, we have to talk about the fact that I don't think Lauryn Licari has been capable of telling the truth for at least the last decade. She worked at Ferris State University on the IT service desk as a specialist, supposedly with a nice salary bump, but before long, notices started showing up. Payments are being missed. Kendra always had an excuse. One time she claimed someone in New Mexico had stolen their identity. Another time she said they'd been scammed. When their car got repossessed, they were hacked. There was just always a story. Meanwhile, Sean knew very little about the cyberbullying. Lauryn always went to her mom, and her mom, Kendra, would say she was handling it. She sure was. She sure was. But what police uncovered was that Kendra hadn't even been working for a year. Central Michigan University had fired her for performance issues. Ferris State didn't give her a raise and instead had actually put her on a performance plan for, get this, hold on, quote, excessive time on non-work texting and calls. And then instead of, stop harassing your daughter, she quits. And it wasn't even like she was spending her time productively after leaving her job. No. For up to 8 hours a day, a full 40-hour work week, this woman is using her time to text her daughter with messages encouraging her to end her life and sending sexually explicit messages to Owen, a 13 or 14-year-old boy. And here's another piece that blows my mind. Some of the messages were actually traced back to the school's Wi-Fi. At first, that made it look like it had to be a student, right? But in reality, Kendra was literally sitting in the parking lot of the school during the middle of the day. Just sitting there, sending these messages to these kids. Now think about that. While teachers and students were inside going about their day, this creep is outside in her car running this whole harassment campaign. And here's the thing, Kendra couldn't help herself. Aside from constantly talking about her daughter, she also wouldn't shut up about the cyberbullying that she was doing. She brought it up with anyone who would listen, just soaking up the sympathy. Oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. That must be so hard. She was basically collecting condolences. Now, when police first came to collect her devices and confront her, they straight up asked her, Kendra, are you obsessed with Owen? And she's like, no, of course not. Nothing like that. She even claimed that the initial texts weren't from her at all, but that she sort of fed off of them. And when the officer pressed her on why she did it, she blamed financial stress, which I get a job. Get a fucking job. Also, the way that I wanted to jump through the screen when Kendra and the police confront Lauryn and tell her that it was her mom this whole time who's been bullying her, and Kendra gets up and starts holding on to her and hugging her as if to protect her, which is insane. Ugh. As a mother myself, I just wanted to jump through the screen and hold this baby. Oh my God. Don't ever touch her again. You don't deserve to ever touch her again. I don't know how Sean kept his cool, because if that was me and my husband and he was causing this sort of strife and then hugging my child, girl, I would set my house ablaze. Later in the documentary, she sits down and said that after some therapy, she had realized that she had been in a crisis. She shared that she had been assaulted at 17 and claimed that she was just trying to protect her daughter and pull her closer. And listen, I'm never going to discredit someone's trauma. If she went through that, that's real. But using it as an excuse for this, no. She was 17, Lauryn was 13. That excuse doesn't work for me. And when asked if she thought Lauryn might actually harm herself, Kendra says no. She said, nobody knows my daughter like me. I know that she wouldn't do that. But honestly, in my opinion, if Lauryn had hurt herself, I think Kendra would have been there just chomping up on the I'm sorries, making it all about her. And I'll be straight with you. I don't think this was ever really about Lauryn. I think it was about Owen. I think Kendra had some strange infatuation with this boy. She put her daughter in situations to be close to him because she couldn't. And then when Lauryn and Owen actually started dating, she gets jealous of her own daughter. And behind the screen, she could say everything that she ever wanted to say to Owen while tearing down her daughter at the same time. A real 2-for-1. I really do think that Kendra was jealous of her own daughter. Lauryn was a good athlete. She's a good student. She's beautiful. And meanwhile, Kendra, ugly inside and out, girl. And I know what somebody's going to say in my comments. You shouldn't make fun of someone in the way that they look. That's not fair. And to that I say she told her own daughter to kill herself. I will not be respecting this woman in any fashion, thank you. But I think Kendra was able to live through her daughter until her daughter started becoming her own person, and she probably didn't like that. And Kendra, I think, also just had some weird, disgusting crush on Owen. Now, let's talk about the repercussions. Kendra ends up pleading guilty to 2 counts of cyber stalking. And honestly, I don't understand that at all. She sent a child sexually explicit messages. How is this woman not in some kind of registry? These messages weren't just mean. They were disgusting and graphic. And the fact that the legal system boiled all of that down to just cyber stalking. What? At her sentencing, she read a letter. Quote, I am sorry for my behavior to Owen McKenney and his family. I am so sorry for my behavior to Chloe Wilson and her family. I am so sorry to my daughter Lauryn and my husband Sean. She also went on to say that she had a mental illness, depression, anxiety, suppressed childhood trauma, including sexual abuse, and unaware that I was in a crisis for many years. And I will say this till I'm blue in the face. I struggle with depression, anxiety myself. I've been through some very traumatic things in my life. Mental illness and childhood trauma can explain behavior, absolutely, but it can never excuse it. Just because you're hurting doesn't give you a free pass to go out in the world and hurt other people, especially not to the point where you're actively telling your own daughter to end her life. And then Kendra says, it was a blessing I got caught because it forced me to stop. Really? Because if you hadn't been caught, when exactly would you have stopped? Would the breaking point have been when one of these kids hurt themselves? Is that what it would have taken? She also says it just got out of hand. This is not something that just spirals out of control. You spent up to 8 hours a day doing this. Lauryn would come home, cry to you about these messages, and you were able to just piece everything together and comfort her while knowing full well you're the one causing it. And then she'd go to bed and you'd pick up your phone and you'd send her more texts so that she could wake up and start the whole cycle over again. I have a hard time with the idea that this just, it's got out of hand. It just, sometimes you just tell your kids to kill themselves. I don't know. It was an accident because you knew how to pause it. You knew how to just pocket it for a second, and that's not an accident. That is control. The other thing I didn't understand in this documentary is that Kendra was allowed to write and communicate with her daughter while she was in prison. And of course, people had a lot to say about that. How could Lauryn still have a relationship with her mother? Why didn't she cut her off? Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. A child's love for their mother is unconditional. Okay? And for most mothers, our love for our children is unconditional too. Breaking that bond is incredibly difficult. And let's not forget, Lauryn is still a teenager. She hasn't lived much life yet. She hasn't seen the world. She hasn't had the experiences that shape you into an adult. I believe that once her world opens up, maybe when she has a family of her own, maybe as she grows into her own womanhood, she'll be able to make clearer decisions about how to move forward with this relationship. But the public focus should never be on Lauryn and her relationship with her mom. It should always be on Kendra and her relationship with her daughter. And those are two very different things. Lauryn would go on to finish her sophomore year at home. Sean would divorce Kendra and get full custody of Lauryn. And Tammy, Chloe's mom, would dress up as Kendra for Halloween. So there's that. Nothing says mean behavior like showing up as Kendra for Halloween while Lauryn still lives in this community. In April of 2023, Kendra Licari was sentenced to 19 months to 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to 2 counts of stalking a minor. She was sent to the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Michigan, but less than 2 years later, on August 8th of 2024, she was paroled. Her parole conditions ban her from contacting Lauryn, and she'll remain under supervision until February of 2026. So while she could have faced years behind bars, in reality, she served just over a year before being released back into the community. Yuck. I think the only reason Kendra agreed to be a part of the Netflix documentary is because she thought that she could spin a story and make herself look like less of the villain. And we've seen women like this before, right? They walk in thinking that they're the smartest person in the room, convinced that they can out-talk the public because they've had all this time to meticulously craft a new narrative. But the thing is, the public is not stupid. We can see right through your shit, Kendra. So that's the story of Kendra Licari, a mother who turned herself into her daughter's worst nightmare. And as much as Netflix tried to let her explain it away, at the end of the day, there is no excuse. You're a terrible human being. Let me know in the comments what you think about this case. Was Kendra jealous, obsessed, just cruel, or all of the above? And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. My name is Bacon Bears, and that's my opinion.